Hello, bonjour and welcome to your new wine video. I'm your host, Julien, and today we are going to be looking at what makes of wine a beverage with a unique taste. As usual, I will break things down into 5 small chapters to keep things simple and digestible for you. So we will be looking at the acidity, the sweetness, the alcohol, the tannins and the aromas in wine. After which, hopefully, you will have a good understanding of what wine is made of and why it tastes like it does. Let's go! So wine, as you probably know, is a pretty acidic beverage. It is in fact one of the most acidic beverages that we drink and more generally one of the most acidic food that we eat. As a point of reference, wine is a little bit less acidic than most sodas, which are very acidic, but it is just as acidic as an orange juice, a little bit more acidic than an apple juice. But of course there is a range of acidity levels in different wines. Generally speaking, like for other fruits, grapes lose acidity and gain more sugar as they ripen. So wines made from riper grapes are going to contain more alcohol and less acidity. White wines as well as sparkling wines are generally the more acidic wines because they are made from grapes that are picked earlier exactly for preserving the freshness of the aroma as well as the acidity that we expect in this type of wine. Red wines are generally speaking less acidic because they are made from riper grapes. Rosé wines are just generally in between. The acidity is a key component in wine, hence it being number 1 in this video, as it makes it food-friendly and pleasing to pair with different types of food, much more so than non-acidic beverages like, let's say, a glass of milk. Acidity also plays a major role in the age-worthiness of our wines, as it acts like a protection against microorganisms and spoilage that may alter the wine over time. So acidity plays a major role in the way we taste and appreciate the wine. But beyond the amount of acidity that is present in different wine, what is also going to play a major part is the amount of sugar or the amount of sweetness that is also present in our wine and acts as a balance. As I was saying before, a soda is extremely acidic, but it also contains a lot of sugar, so it doesn't feel all that acidic, which leads us to the second point, the second main component of a wine and the wine's taste, the sweetness. Most wines are dry overall, even though you have to know that all wines contain an element of sweetness. It is simply more or less pronounced in the taste. Again, there is a range, a variety of sweetness levels in different wines. I have here a glass of Provence rosé, which is a typical style of rosé that is known to be bone dry. Most red wines are going to be dry and contain very little sugar. Here I've got a dessert wine from Bordeaux, from Sauternes, for those who know, one of the most famous of all dessert wines in the world. The dessert wines, such as the port wines, the muscat wines, are known and renowned for containing a lot of sugar. Sweetness in wine generally comes from what we call the residual sugars. Those are sugars that were naturally present in the grape juice that haven't been transformed, that haven't been fermented into alcohol by the yeast during the fermentation and the winemaking process. Most wines are fermented dry, meaning they wait and they ferment them until all the sugars have been transformed into alcohol, hence those wines being bone dry. But winemakers may choose to stop the fermentation at any point to leave some residual sugar, some sweetness, some additional sweetness into the wine. This is generally to balance some wines that may be otherwise too acidic, that may feel too acidic. You may find this in some German Riesling or some very acidic types of wine where they remain a few grams of sugar just to balance out the excessive acidity. Or like in this Sauterne wine, they may stop the fermentation while there is still a lot of sugar remaining, so the wine tastes and feels sweet. So very sweet wines are made from grapes that have got a very high concentration of sugar. Those are going to be the late harvest wines made from grapes that are left outside on the vines to ripen for a very, very long time until they reach a very high level of sugar. They are going to be wines made from grapes affected by the noble rot, which is a fungus that concentrates the sugar into the wine, or from grapes that are very ripe under the sun of Portugal for making ports, for example. But even wines that contain virtually no sugar always have an element of sugar, and that is because of the presence of alcohol. This is not very well known, but alcohol itself, or more precisely ethanol, does provide a sweet sensation to the taste and to the palate. This is why most hard liquors, even though they virtually contain no sugar, do taste somewhat sweet. Think of whiskeys or vodkas, for example. The same applies to wines. The high alcohol wines made from riper grapes in warmer climates, let's think of a 15% alcohol Zinfandel from California, for example, is always going to taste more ample and slightly sweeter than a 12.5% alcohol Pinot Noir from a very cool climate in Burgundy, France, for example. The fourth element and component of a wine's taste is perhaps one of the most important, the tannins. Tannins are called this way, and this may surprise you because they belong to the same family of molecules that are used to tan animal skin to make leather. Tannins essentially love to bind with proteins, and that's exactly why they are used to tan leather. They also love to bind with the proteins on our palate, and that's why they give this drying sensation, especially on the finish of the tasting, that is called astringency. Tannins are mainly contained into our red wine. As you can sort of obviously see, they do play a major role into deepening the color of our red wine. But you may be surprised to learn that even rosé wines and any white wine contains small amounts of tannins as well. They do provide also a slightly drying sensation to the finish, a bit of a savory feel, sometimes a little bit of saltiness to the finish. It gives a salivating, food-friendly sensation to rosé wines and white wines, something to always have in mind when you taste even white wines and rosé wines. But let's have a quick look now at the fifth component of the taste of wine, the aromas. Of course, aromas are a key component to the taste and flavors of wine. They would deserve an entire video, which I'm probably going to be doing very soon. But let's say that a wine, any wine, a normal wine, may contain up to and sometimes more than 1,000 different types of aromas. This is why you're going to hear me, you hear wine professionals and wine connoisseurs talk about different types of fruits, different types of flowers, different types of vegetables, animal notes, notes of vanilla, notes of caramel, notes of oak, you name them, notes of spices. This is because wine contains an immense variety of different aromas, very often the exact same type of aromas that are found in strawberries or in different fruits, the exact same, or at least some aromas that have a very similar chemical composition and that essentially taste and smell like those very ingredients that you hear talking about. You should also know and remember that we don't taste aromas, we can only smell them with our nose. Our taste buds can only analyze the saltiness, the sweetness, the acidity and the bitterness. Everything else that comes out of a wine is analyzed by your nose. This is why, again, you find wine connoisseurs and professionals aerating their wine as they drink it this way. This is to evaporate some of the aromas and smell them better and analyze the complexity and the variety of aromas that are found in the wine. But now that we've seen these different components that form the taste of wine, let's wrap things up and see what it means when you taste your wine. So these 5 components form what we call the flavor of wine. It is the interaction between these 5 elements that compose the sensations that we experience when we taste wine. On top of these, there are 3 concepts that you should have in mind when tasting wine. A, the balance. How does the acidity interact with the sweetness and the tannins and the aromas to form a more complete whole, harmonious whole? The fine wine come elegant, subtle, with a lot of finesse, because everything comes together to provide a smooth, subtle, fine sensation on your palate. B, the complexity. How many aromas are broadcasted, are featured in your wine? The more aromas, the more complexity you can identify with different types of notes in your wine. Generally speaking, the better the wine. C, the length of your wine. After you've tasted the wine, after you swallowed or spit it out, how long can you taste the different flavors, the different aromas in your wine? This allows you to enjoy the wine for longer and analyze more of its finer details. Those are the 3 factors that are used to assess the quality and the finesse of a very high-end and fine wine. Anyways, I'll leave it there. I know this may be a little much to absorb all at once, but it is precisely this complexity, this complex interaction, harmonious interaction between those different components that make wine such a fascinating, interesting beverage to explore and learn more and more about. I hope after this video you know and you understand it a little bit better now. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you soon with the next one. Au revoir.